Oh, welcome to One Moment Wiser. This is Christy Bridges, and I help Christians become authors because God speaks to people through our unique voices. I have Stacy Mitchell with us today, and you may have met Stacy before. She has shared a lot of wisdom with us, and I'm just so happy to have her back because she has been pouring into my life for years. And I'm just not the same person I was when we met because of our relationship. Do you have people in your life like that? Share this with them because I think they'll enjoy it as well. Stacey, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yay. So today is, it's a day that I have a heart to speak to people, but I don't have the experience to speak on this topic. And you actually have the, life experience to really bring some authenticity here. This week in our prayer calendar for One Moment Wiser, we were praying for single parents, and we were praying for them to have wisdom and encouragement, but we were also praying for the people around them to reach out to them and be the givers that we need to be as the church. So you are here because I know that you have a very unique experience as a single parent, and you have an amazing son who has grown up to be just a quality man, and that says a lot. So anyway, thanks again.
Thank you.
When you were first pregnant, and also when your son was young, can you tell us a little bit about that? What were the challenges that you faced? What was that like for you?
Um, I think there were challenges on three different fronts, to be honest. The first was my personal disappointment in myself.
Oh,
I couldn't be happy that I was pregnant because it was out of wedlock. Um, my son's father and I were not in love. It was not an ideal situation. And I promised myself that I wouldn't be a single mom. I wouldn't perpetuate that. My mother was a single mother. I didn't want to do that. So the second front where I was fighting was the spiritual front. I didn't know if we were cursed, if we were blessed, if I didn't even know enough to know what the right course of action was at that point because I had planned to abort. I don't know if I ever told you that, but that's a whole story in itself because God literally stepped in and saved my baby. But the third front where I was, and I'll tell you more about that, I promise. The third front about that I was fighting was with everyone else. Right. So first there was fighting with me, then there's fighting with what I think God said, not what he said, but what I think God said, and then fighting with everybody else. Right. My mother, my mother knows me because I'm her daughter. She's known me my whole life. And I told her I was pregnant. And she said, I just got one question. This is Daddy White. Yes, ma'am. His daddy's white.
That's what she had.
You know what that means, right? No. Well, you got to marry a white man now because I don't want mismatched grandkids.
Oh, wow.
My mother's response. But that sounds horrible, but knowing that it's my mother, that was her funny way of saying it's okay. I know you're upset, but it's going to be okay. Like if you look beyond where you are right now, we have other things to worry about. This isn't worth worrying about. That's not worth worrying about either. But that was her way of saying it's okay. She didn't fuss. That was a fake fussing from my mother. Now, what really happened that was difficult was telling the body of Christ that I was pregnant out of wedlock. And you never know what pedestal someone has put you on until you fall off of it. Ugh. I had no idea how the body was going to respond to me being pregnant. I'm not even going to mention the negative things because I think every parent out there who's a single parent has heard the negative. from everyone, right?
Yeah.
How did you have a baby with that person? What were you thinking? This is what was told to me, and that I'm not going to delve into, but I'm going to mention it. God has to write a whole new plan for your life because you messed it up. That was a believer. That was a high level believer that said that. But my godmommy, Barbara Evans, and I hope she's listening. I hope she gets to see this. Barbara, I love you to pieces. The first thing she said to me was, do not, when I told her I was pregnant and I was having the baby, do not let your good be evil spoken of, was her response, which is scripture, right? I know this, people are going to convince you that this is bad, but what you're doing right now is the right choice. And that's what you should focus on. She convinced, because she spoke that over me early on, when I started to hear the other negative things, God had already set the foundation of what I was doing was a good thing. So I didn't put credence into the other things. Because if I had listened to those people first, if I'd heard that first, I would have aborted. But because I heard from God through my friend Barbara first, and that foundation was set, everything else everyone else said to me just kind of bounced off. It just, in one ear and out the other.
I love that.
So that it was a difficult process, being pregnant out of wedlock in church was hard. And having the baby wasn't any easier. It was there was always I'm trying to think of how to say this without sounding completely rude and crass, but there was always this underlying thought that people didn't always say, that they thought I was going to get in trouble again. So sometimes the body of Christ would, when I would say, hey, I'm going out with my girlfriends, would you watch my son for a few hours? You might get in trouble again. Oh. I have to work third shift at this job and I really need someone to watch my kid. You might get in trouble again. So when my son was younger, or when I was pregnant, there were a lot of battles going on. I haven't even talked about the physical battles because those were so different. I couldn't do anything about some of that, but the other things that were going on were very difficult. But even after he got here, there were challenges, and I'm specifically speaking about challenges from the body of Christ. I'm not speaking about challenges from the rest of the world. It was challenging.
Yeah. So, okay, I just want to pause for a second and break some of this down.
Okay.
I love, by the way, that your mom's reaction was to, start a little bit of a fuss just to let you know that things were going to be okay and to refocus you. And I when you explained that, before you explained it, I was like, what? When you explained it, I'm like, I've seen me do the same thing. So, I see that, but I have to just say that one person speaking truth into your life, instead of just listening, instead of, giving you a warning about something, that person speaking some truth into your life, God used that word as a protector, as a shield for you when you were talking to other people. And that, we have a shield is something you hold. A shield is something you have to hold. So we have a choice of what we're going to hold, and God will send his word out. We have to choose to hold that up and use that as a shield. So I love that you did that. You also we're talking about you might get in trouble again, right? And that happens. I mean, it does. It happens.
Right.
But guess what? We can't control that. As outsiders who are not the actual person, we have no control over that. I have tried to control people in my life. Oh man, doesn't work. And so that's a good word, I think, for all of us to know that we're responsible to encourage one another and try to take care of one another. but I'm not anybody's mommy except my kid. And even with our kids, as you and I are both proof, our mommies can't always control us.
Nope, not
Right.
at all.
So
And
did
we, and
you?
we shouldn't want to, you know. Um, as I was raising my son, I wanted him to be, I had ideas of what I wanted him to be as he grew up, and wasn't going to be it. And what's even more important about my son's personality is I'm a very talkative person. We're both extroverts. I'm a very talkative person, and he doesn't talk a lot. He doesn't. I hope that you probably hear my dogs. I'm so sorry.
Apparently, our
Um,
animals are talking to each other.
but he doesn't talk a lot. So when I would fuss and yell, the more I would yell at him, the more he would fall back. No expression on his face, no upset, no anger. The last time I tried to spank my son, I guess he was maybe 12, and I was winded and out of breath when I was done. And that boy was just standing there like this. Like, this is obviously not the way to go.
Right.
But that's when God started to speak to me, because I don't think I even prayed about it before. I thought I was just going to, point him in the way he should go, and he's just going to go, right?
Right.
But God started to tell me things like, I have him going a different route than you. So don't expect him to be a repeat of you. That's not what he's going to do. There are some things that I needed to protect him from, and there are some things I needed to just watch him do. So God had always taken me back to other points in his life and how I handled those and how to bring those into his older years. When a baby is learning to walk, it would be silly for a mom and a dad to hold on to this little, 10-month-old, 1-year-old's hand and always hold them and make sure they never hit anything. That's not how you do that, right?
Right.
You let them pull up on the furniture. You let them push on the TV set, but you just make sure that the environment they're in is a safe environment to make the mistake in, right?
Right.
So God showed me how to make a good environment for my son to be able to make mistakes in. The hard part, dear God, is watching your child make any mistakes at all. Whether it's as small as missing a step and falling and scuffing his knee, or not turning in a homework assignment, or choosing a different career path. It is difficult to watch your children do what you think is going to be a mistake. But God has made it clear to me his route is not going to be the same as yours. So I learned when he was around 12, 13 years old to watch him without trying to control him. That freed me up so much.
Really?
It freed me. He said, I'm going to take this girl out. And I'd go, okay. There's a question I ask my son every single time he says he met a girl, and I say, well, I always ask about her, and it's never, I'm not even going to repeat what I say because it's not necessarily a friendly thing to say, but I always say, well, who's this girl? Who's this chick? Who is this? And he says, she's nice. Mom, be nice to her. And then after a while, and he'd say that about his friends, and I'm like, am I really that mean? I think I'm a really loving person. So what did I learn from that? My son understands and respects the fact that I'm a mama bear. There's nothing wrong with that. But God, on the other hand, was teaching me how to be an appropriate mama bear. As a parent, we need to recognize that God loves us the same way that we love our kids.
Yes.
And there are some things that God lets us walk into. I see my baby. She is prime example would be my dating life. I'm just putting that out there. God knew before I stepped out on that first date with whoever that this was not the right person. Sure, God could have thrown up a wall or, had an angel appear. Don't go here. He didn't, right? He didn't. Instead, he gave me a good environment to be able to make the mistakes. And he's always got his Holy Spirit in my ear. He's always showing me what's in front of me, what I need to pay attention to. and I can make educated guesses. And I don't know if everybody has had that experience or not, but I've been on dates mid-fork to my face and look up and realize you are not the one. I can finish my meal, I can be kind, and not see that person again. As a single parent, there are times when we're going to watch our children walk into things, and we're going to go, okay, that's what you want to do. But yes, I'm going to be watching you. And this was funny. A while ago, my son, this is when he was in high school. He's 23 now, so this is obviously a long time ago. He was out doing something, and not anything bad. He was just hanging out with some friends, and I heard the same story from 3 different people before he got home. Like, they had already told me what he did. None of it was bad.
Okay.
Just that I guess it was something about I don't know. They were dancing in a parking lot or singing or what. It was just being silly kids. And it wasn't a bad thing that he was doing. It was the fact that 3 different people came to me and told me that it happened. Oh, you should have seen Avery. He was, I don't know, I guess it was something about dancing in a parking lot is what I'm remembering. But when he got home and I said, so how'd it go? That was good. Not that he was hiding anything. This is just a boy thing. Boys don't talk. So I started asking him questions, and his face just got. I go, here's what you need to remember. When I send you out into the world, you're not alone. You're never alone.
Mm.
People will see you and not say a word to you, but they'll come back and talk to me. A good friend of mine I used to work with saw my son at school once. He had never met my son, but we're always all over Facebook, Instagram. So he said, I saw Avery at school today. And I go, you did? He said, yeah. I said hi to him like I knew him, and he just said hi back. And I realized after I passed him, I've never met that boy before. He probably thinks I'm strange. And I go, I bet he will never tell me about this incident. He won't even mention it. So I waited till the end of the week. How was school this week? It was good. See anybody new today or do this week? No. Did a guy walk past you and just say hello to you and call you by your name? He goes, you know what? Yeah, he did. That didn't bother you? He said, no, because you got a million Facebook friends and they all think they know me.
It's true.
When people meet my son for the first time, they think they know him. But there's so many important things yoked up in that. The first one is, as a parent, you know your kids, right? The Bible even says about us that the heart is wicked. Who can know it? It's God that judges the heart, right? We think our hearts are good. Well, I'm a good person. I'm not mean. No. So God knows my heart, right? We know our kids' hearts too. And if you asked God about me, he would never say anything negative about me. He would say there is no one on this planet that I love more than my Stacy. Yeah, Stacy's different. I made her that way. Yeah. All those personality quirks that y'all think are just weird, I made her that way. Very proud of my Stacy. So my conversation about my son needs to reflect the same thing. I love my son. Oh, he's wonderful. Oh, yeah. He's got some personality quirks. He's different. But you know what? It's okay because God made him that way.
Yes.
That when I speak about my son, I speak so highly of him. People think that they know him and they have attributed great things to him that he hasn't done yet. And that's okay. But my mouth on my son is very important. I remember several years ago being in my backyard. I was walking around in my backyard. And I was about to say something negative in my prayer time with God. I was like, Avery is, and it wasn't awful. It was just that I thought he was going to have a cold. I thought he sounded like he was about to get sick. And I said, Avery is, and before I could finish what I was going to say, the Holy Spirit said, stop. The only thing between your son and Satan is your mouth.
Ooh.
Okay. So you walk around with that in your spirit. And again, it was a cold, right? It's not even a big deal, right? But what happens when it is a big deal? What
Yeah.
happens when you've sent your child out into the world and um, there's a snowstorm and he's in an accident? And you have to make sure you're speaking positive, life affirming things when those things happen, which did happen to my son last year. He was in a car, he totaled his car. But I had been speaking life over him for so long. I spoke life into his driving habits. I spoke life into his friendships. I asked God to orchestrate those friendships. But when those things happen, when you see things in your children, we have to be careful what we speak over them, because there really isn't anything between you and between your child and Satan but your mouth. So when you start to speak, and this is really important, when you start to speak things like, "You're stupid," "Lord, you are stupid,"
Mm-mm.
those are foundational things that your kids will take with them forever.
Yeah.
I say that as someone who is currently in therapy for some of the things that I heard when I was a young person that I'm still working through. Those tapes in my head that I don't even realize are playing. Parents, you are writing those tapes. You're recording those tapes right now.
Yes.
My son, and my son's father is Irish, so I wanted to give my son an Irish name. And I did not look far because his name is Avery, which is in the A's. I didn't look far into the alphabet. I just was scrolling through Irish names. And the name Avery means ruler of the little people, which is funny. Like ruler of leprechauns, not children. But what I held on to was the word ruler. If you ever see my son, ever, anywhere, anytime, half sleep, in the middle of whatever, and you say, "Boy, what does your name mean?" "Ruler." You be half asleep. "What does your name mean?" "Ruler." So when we saw I saw Black Panther without him.
Mm-hmm.
And when I saw Black Panther and I saw him fighting, and Angela Bassett as his mother yelled out, "Show them who you are," I cried. I cry every time I think about that, because I've been telling my son his whole life, "Show them who you are."
Yes.
Who are you? What did I name you? Who are you supposed to be? Anybody watching this, if you ever see my son anywhere ever, you don't ever even have to say his name. Walk up to him and say, "What does your name mean?" "It means ruler. Who are you?" It's probably how he'd respond. That is what I've instilled in my son since he was born. You are a ruler. His middle name, I won't go into all of it because I don't want anybody to start stalking him, but his name is Avery. Mm-hmm. And our last name, Mitchell, means strives to be like God. I named him what I named him on purpose. Now, you may not want to name your children, or you may not put any credence into what you name your kids, and that's fine. Because even if my son's name were John, I'm going to still tell him he's a ruler.
Yeah.
It wouldn't matter what I named him. I raised him to be a ruler. So when he started acting like he knew what was going on and started making decisions and acting like a ruler, I had to remember what I told him, what I've been telling him his whole life. My point being, you really have to be careful what you say over your children. You may feel a lot of stuff. Like I'm watching my kid, his nose is red because my son's skin is very, very fair. His nose was red. His eyes were watering. He was coughing and sneezing. And I go, Lord, I just thank you and I give you praise that we are healed by Jesus' stripes. Avery is healed by Jesus. I refuse to speak that over my son. I wouldn't do it. At that point, it was just an exercise to learn the principle.
Yeah.
Later on, when my son was in dire trouble, when his GPA was in the 50s and 60s, and he was trying to graduate, I had to be careful what I spoke.
Yes.
When he was not doing homework and failing grades, and I was frustrated with him, I had to be careful what I spoke. So there's a difference between speaking life over a situation and then calling things the way they are. I'm not going to argue that he was indeed on a track to fail. But I never, ever out of my mouth said, my son is failing. My son has failed. I never said the words. And by the same token, I encouraged him. I said, you know what? You're smarter than this. And he'll tell you himself, I would say to him repeatedly, you know, I'm not going to lie to you, right? Yes, ma'am. So if you were stupid, I would tell you were stupid. Yes, ma'am. You're not stupid, baby. You can do this. I'm not sure why you're not doing it, but you can do this. Jump to maybe a few months ago, because he's just started a job that he really loves. And I heard him do some math, quick math in the air. And he walked away. And I called him back and I said, wait a minute. You just did like some math real quick in the air. Like he knew what 20% of something was to tip. He goes, yeah. I go, what was going on in high school when you were just not doing your homework? He said, they didn't want me to do things the way I can do it in my head. I couldn't do it on paper. I go, okay. So you knew? He said, yes, Mom. I always knew that I wasn't stupid. I just didn't do things the way they wanted me to. I go, okay. And then he said, you know, I could have done what they asked. I could have. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, smart for you to recognize that as you've gotten older. But that gave me an opportunity to have a conversation with him about, I know you're able to do this. Tell me why we didn't get there. That was his choice. But I never spoke the negativity over him. I didn't speak, no matter what I saw, I did not speak the negativity over him. And as a parent, especially when there's only one parent, you have got to be really careful not to speak the negative things over your children. So I'm guessing, because I've never been married, I'm guessing that when there are two parents, maybe one parent might be off one day and the other one kind of picks up the slack, you know, and maybe I have, you know, I'm done with this kid, but then maybe dad will come along and say something. You don't have that luxury when you're the only parent.
Yeah. So how do you have conversations that get the job done without speaking into them the things that they carry for years? I mean, you and I have seen in our own lives little things pop up where we're responding today in a conversation to something that's in the back of our mind from 30 years ago. You know what I mean? It's like it's created a response because we believed that we were going to be abandoned, or that we were going to be rejected, or, you know, whatever. And so in order not to plant that, you still have to, as a parent, have the hard conversations and say, you need to do this, or, you know, we're not going to the fair or whatever. How do you do that without planting the negative, and also without just exhausting yourself?
You just mentioned it. You gave the answer right there in the question. So in everything in life, there are consequences. For every, what's the science rule? If for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction.
Yep.
Well, you know, I remember freshman year, I took my son, sent him to the high school. I'm all excited. He's going to be in marching bands. I'm just super excited for this boy. The day of the first football game, I got a call from his health teacher. It's 3 weeks into, because the first football game, obviously, like for school, he's first time playing in the marching band. It's the first game, right? They've been playing all summer. And his health teacher calls me or emails me and says, I have no assignments from Avery yet at all for this year.
3 weeks? Come on.
3 weeks. 3 weeks, the boy hasn't done anything. So I go out he's already at the school. Like, he didn't come home that day. At football games, you kind of like, the kids would get out of school and parents would go and drop off food because they would have to practice right after school. And they'd go right onto the field. We just see him after the football game. I had to go out before they took formation, before they put their uniforms on. I walked out into the field. I'm walking toward the band director. My son is already taller than me. He's a freshman, but he's every bit of 5'10", 5'11". Right now he's 6'1", but he's taller than me. And he walks up and he stands in front of me. He says, where are you going? Where are you going? I said, move or I'll move you. He backs out of the way. He's walking with me. He's, Mom, what, Mom. I'm like, do you want me to tell your band director why you're not going to perform tonight, or do you want me to do it? What? I'm at the band director at this point, and I go, Avery's not performing tonight. What's going on? Avery hasn't done any homework in health class at all. I thought I was going to get some static from the band director. Mr. Barametti, love you to pieces. Thank you so much for mentoring my boy. Instead, Mr. Barametti walked my son over to the cymbal line. He played the cymbals that year as a freshman. Walked him over to the cymbal line and made him tell his teammates why there was going to be a hole in their line.
Oh.
He had no problems with homework the rest of the year.
I guess.
No.
Oh man, freshman year, everything is so embarrassing anyway. Yes. I can't even imagine. He must have felt like the world was over.
Not get to play, he had to tell his bandmates, because if you've ever seen marching bands, it's very precise, right? Mm-hmm. Everything is, and you're judged on that. They would compete. Having a hole in your line is very obvious. So I mean, everybody's on their right moves. You can't fill in the hole. It's just going to be a hole there. Mm-hmm. So he learned that his individual
performance,
whatever the things he did, would have consequences, not just for himself, but other people around him. What I had to do as a parent, I think every parent has to do this, whether you're married or single, you have to teach your children that there are consequences for their actions. You're not going to wink all the time. Like, there's some things, that they get up and they go with their friends and you realize the dishes didn't get done. Once or twice, it's not the worst thing in the world. But there are some things that you're going to do in your lifetime that are going to affect other people. Now, my son has been fortunate enough to see things that he's done that have positively affected other people too. But that day, he learned without fussing, fighting, I didn't have to do any other real punishment. It was simply, you're not playing tonight. And not only you're not playing, you're going to make your other teammates look real bad. And we had no problems with that after that.
When we are in, and I have to say this, because when we're in high school, especially, everything feels like life is over. I never want to show my face again because of this. But looking back, it is so much safer to learn that kind of lesson in that kind of situation, even if you got pushback from the coach or from the director. It's so much safer to let your kid learn that lesson in that situation than to learn that lesson in their dream job or in, when they have their own place and they have to pay the rent and they called in a few days because they were hungover, whatever. Teach it now when they can really, maybe there's a fight, maybe they get mad, maybe they slam the door, but they're not losing their apartment or, seeing something fail on their resume. So, and even those things, God can get us through it if we learn the lesson. I think our whole life, honestly, to some extent, is the safe training ground God has given us, but as a parent, you have an opportunity. And I'm really,
just like I said before, you create the environment that they're capable of making those mistakes in.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we have to do as parents. My son has a really good job now that pays really well. And he learned from marching bands not to be late. He was percussion. Percussionists feel like they should be the first ones on the field and the last ones off the field.
Mm-hmm.
When you are a mom who has worked all day and had class and it's 9:30, your kid has not come off the field yet because percussion is still practicing, you know what I'm talking about. But now at his current job, I'm not late. I'm not calling in. If I got a cough and they make me call in sick, and that's what a lot of companies are doing now. If you come in with any symptoms of COVID, then they ask you to go home and go get tested.
Right.
Oh, he is that very day. And he is waiting by the phone, checking email every second to find out if he has it or not. And as soon as he finds out, that email is going to his HR department within 5 minutes of him receiving it because he wants to go back to work. He,
Awesome.
I co-signed his car loan, so I see when he makes his car payment. He has always made his car payments, I'd probably say roughly 2 weeks ahead of time, as long as he's had a car. The
Yes.
things that he's learned at work now, my son is asking to learn stuff. He's asking to take classes so he can get a promotion. Those things, excuse me. And let me back up a little bit. Yes, I tried to create an environment that allowed him to learn those things where it was safe so that when he got into the real world, he wouldn't make awful mistakes. But the flip side of that too is I serve a wonderful God who has had mercy on me. He has had mercy on my son. And I never want to discount that in our story,
Yeah.
because we're not perfect. I've probably said some things to my son that might send him to therapy. I can't think of any things that I've done, but I may have done or said some things that upset him or hurt him still to this day. I used to yell a lot. My son doesn't like yelling. To this day, when he has a girlfriend and she gets to start acting crazy and jumping all over, he is out. Sorry, y'all. I
In the
know that you
same
don't know why
way.
my son loves you, but I'm telling you now, yelled at him, he's out. So I may have done some things too, but continual prayer, continual applying the blood, continual asking God, am I doing the right thing? Should I be doing this? I think I messed up. Can you help me fix it? That continual prayer, that continual walking relationship with God is not just good for you as a person, but it's going to bless your family.
Yeah, true. And I just have to say there's a maturing process in all of our lives. And that maturing process includes at some point in our lives, we push away from the people who've nurtured us
Yeah.
because we have a drive to become independent. It's part of the maturing process. And at some point in the maturing process, we discover hangups that we acquired somehow in our youth. A lot of times between age birth and 5 years old, but sometime in our youth we all acquire um, wrong responses, wrong beliefs, and they can be based on unfortunately too often they're based on mistakes parents make because parents are inexperienced when they become
Right. There's
parents,
no
right?
book.
But they can be based on anything, but just know that if your child is going through either of those times, that pushing away time or that suddenly realizing they really do need some counseling or some healing, that there's really some garbage they're carrying around in their baggage, right? Or if you as a person are going through that, just accept it. It's something everybody needs to go through at some point, is self-evaluation and healing. And God is there to help you with that. And God has equipped other people to be there for you. You're not alone in that. So I just want to just take that whole feeling of I'm just a screw up off the table, because no, that's part of life. But
No.
I love that you went to God over and over and you said, hey, help me parent. And I think, when there are very few two-parent households anymore, but even when there are two-parent households, we still need that. We don't just go to each other. We have to continuously go to God for that. You were in school raising your kid. So, and I love that he actually understands, hard work, showing up and paying bills early, to take care of things. That is huge, especially as young as he is. But you seem to, from an outsider's view, you seem to have done a pretty good job of not making your whole life all about him. You did things to take care of you, but making your life somewhat about him so that he wasn't neglected. I just finished reading my friend Prima Donna Braddock's new book that's coming out soon. And in it, some of the girls told stories that just broke my heart because they're beautiful people who were treated as though they didn't belong in their own families. And, some of them, and, treated as though they were just an inconvenience. And it is very inconvenient to have a kid when you don't expect one. And even when you do expect one, kids are inconvenient. But
right.
You made a way to never let Avery feel that way. While at the same time you pursued things that kept your life moving forward. How did you do that?
So let me correct a couple of things. Everything I did for my son.
Oh, okay.
So I graduated from college, or I marched, because I actually didn't graduate till the following semester, but I actually marched December the 6th, and I gave birth December the 26th. It wasn't until May of the following year that I actually got my degree. I had to talk a teacher into letting me take a D instead of this incomplete, because I just needed the score to go. My GPA was fine. I just needed the score to get out of there. When I went back to school to get a graduate degree, my son was in high school. He was in high school. And I did that because I wanted to make more money so I could be a good parent. I wanted to buy a home, which I did buy. I didn't want a home. I own it. I don't know how, I love it, but I could have had a condo if it were left to me. But my son's a percussionist. You can't.
Ooh, yeah.
You can't play drums and let me stop here for a second. I'm not sure if she's watching. I hope she is. Stephanie, Aunt Dot, you're the person who showed my son the movie Drumline, and all of a sudden now he's a percussionist. So from the moment he saw that movie, he said, I want to play the drums. He played my pots and pans. He played boxes. He played the couch. He found all these different tones and everything in my house. And then when I was looking to buy a home, I thought, I can't buy a condo because he can't play that way. We need a house. So the very room that I'm sitting in was his percussion room, and I bought him a full drum set.
Oh, nice.
Buying that full drum set meant that I couldn't do some things for me. It's okay though, it's temporary, but I did all of that for him. Now, what you don't know is shortly after buying the home, I think it was maybe a year later, I had just gotten a promotion at my job. It was awesome. And I got sick. Couldn't figure out what was wrong with me for anything. Long story short, I needed to have a hysterectomy, and I was diagnosed with sarcoidosis. This all happened within a couple of months of each other. And they were both impacting me at the same time. I was very, very sick. The following spring, I decided to go get a graduate degree. So I had sarcoidosis, which is an autoimmune disorder, a lot like lupus, lots of fatigue, joint pain, breathing issues. My son's in high school, mind you, so we're going to marching band competitions, and I'm a band mom, so that means that I'm lugging crap for people. I am in the stands screaming my lungs out. I am sitting in football stands constantly. And at that point in my life, I was 330 pounds because I was on steroids and chemo in graduate school with a kid in high school traveling for marching bands. Now I'm going to go back and ask the question you asked again. How did I do that? And my answer is, I don't know.
Wow.
That was a whole lot of God giving me grace and extra strength. I remember the kids went to Disney World one year, and I went too. I wanted to go. I knew I couldn't drive, and I couldn't be on the bus with them because my health wouldn't allow it. So I flew. But I flew with laptops, and my laptop broke. I had to connect my laptop to the television in the hotel room. And I spent the very first, because I taught my son to work first and play later. I spent the very first day in Orlando writing my capstone project and turning it in for my first degree.
You had to live what you've been teaching.
That's the way it is. So when I saw him, I took my phone and I said, here's my teacher responded to me already. He said, did she? I go, yeah. I wrote he goes, what did she say? She said, I'm done. Are you serious? I'm done. I am here with you celebrating, but I'm also celebrating the fact that I have a graduate degree now.
That is awesome.
Wow, Mom. But after that, I passed out. I was asleep for like 12 hours because I was just exhausted from trying to write this. You do what you have to. And let me say this too. That's not a unique experience. There are moms out here that do this every day. Mm-hmm. I'm going to throw this out here because it's February. There are Black moms who do this every day. We're not unicorn. We're not unicorns. Can you see that? I don't know if you can see that in the camera.
Oh, there it is.
The unicorn. We're not unicorns. We're not strange, woodland creatures. Lots of people do this every day. Mm-hmm. The only way that you can be successful doing these things is to bring God into it every single time and to stay there. When I inadvertently ran over my laptop as I was leaving my house, didn't realize I'd done it, grabbed it, put it in the car. I flew to Orlando and realized the screen was cracked. I cried because I knew I had to get this capstone project done before I left Orlando, and I had a plan and I don't know what to do now. I needed a plan B. So I sit there and I cry in this hotel room for about 20 minutes. And then finally I look in front of me and I go, that TV is really huge. I wonder, and somewhere along the line, God told me to call and ask for an HDMI cord.
And they had one? That's awesome.
They had one. And they brought it to me like room. They didn't make me go look around for it. They brought it to my room and hooked it up to my computer for me and said, ma'am, can you see now? Do you need anything else? No, I'm surprised you did this much.
Lord.
He takes, and I'm not saying whatever he's done for me, he'll do for anybody else, right? I'm not special. He's not a respecter of persons. So if you find yourself, and let me say this too, gosh, if you find yourself as a single parent and you realize that there are some things there are some dreams that have not come to pass for you. The time you spend raising your children will not negate your dream.
Yes.
The time you spend, I was in Orlando for a week to hang. I mean, I had tickets to all the parks and the kids were performing one night. They got to do all kinds of fun things in the park. I purposely was not a chaperone. I just wanted to be there. I didn't want a chaperone. So I had a plan for what the work that I had to get done there. But the goal was, I'm going to work for a day and I'm going to party for 6. I was going to be allowed to do that. Whatever it is that you have to do, whatever your dreams are, putting them on hold to do something for your children will not negate the dream. And I will say this too, if I have to be completely honest, the wait a lot of the time was good for me to be prepared for the next step.
Yeah.
So when I left, I took some classes and I was struggling with taking these classes and I took a semester off, which I don't generally do, but I needed that rest so I could be ready for the next half, right? Yes. I think the story is Elisha is fussing and he's running from Jezebel and he tells God, just kill me right here. Like, I'm done. An angel comes, feeds him and puts him to sleep under a tree. Elijah, he wakes up. Yes. The angel says, let me give you some more food and you need to go back to sleep because this is going to be hard for you. Let me get you some good rest. God is not upset about us taking rest. Right. God is not upset about what we think is a detour in our journey. What we think is a detour is us just following what he already gave us. We just had a different plan, but his plan was always to go this way. So whatever you think is a detour is really a part of his plan. So when you see those detours come or you see a delay, okay, Lord, it looks like we got something to do here. So why are we delayed? My favorite, one of my favorite stories in the Bible, it's one of them, but there's so many. But the woman at the well, when Jesus says, I need to go through Samaria, and everybody else is like, that don't even make sense. This is way out of the way. It's like trying to go to California through Canada. That just don't make sense, right? So why are you doing this? He made a way. He went out of his way to make sure that that woman knew who he was, because her job at that point was to go into the city and say, I've seen a man who knew my whole history. I've seen a man who he's got to be the Christ. Yeah. Had Jesus not gone out of his way to interrupt her day, she would have gone into the city anyway and said nothing.
Right.
Because she was specifically working to not be around women. She didn't want to be around people. She didn't want anybody talking to her. Jesus said, you've had 5 husbands. The man you're with now is not your husband. She was not trying to make friends. I just want to get my water and go home. Had Jesus not made that detour and interrupted her, she would not have been in the story. Mm-hmm. There are times when God will interrupt our story, interrupt our day, delay things, detour things that look like it's not exactly what it's supposed to be. I would say to you, trust that. This is not going to be a popular thing to say, but I'm going to say it. If you were given a baby, that was not an accident. Yes, science is at play. You present the right body parts in the right times, then yes, babies are formed. Sometimes babies form and they don't stay. Sometimes babies are formed and you give birth and they don't make it. Sometimes people struggle to even get that together. A baby is a blessing. And if you have this child, if God has entrusted you with this baby, let that be your focus. That blessing, knowing that it's a blessing, let that be your focus. That I would encourage you to let that be your focus. As I walked through raising my son, there were always times when people would make snide remarks, not knowing anything about the situation under which my son was conceived, because it was and it was not the normal. It wasn't normal. The way he was, people would not know. They just assumed that I was this flip, fast. Old people would call girls fast. And now you got stuck. You got this baby, and now you're fussing. No. And to answer your question you asked previously, he never felt like he was an inconvenience or an interruption, because he wasn't. Yeah. And I wasn't going to ever let him feel that way. He knows his mother he knows he is loved, not just by me, but I also purposed to make sure that the people in his life were people that were going to speak life over him. Yeah. I'm not telling anybody else to do this. It's up to you. I don't know what everybody else's call is. I tried to date for a while, and then I gave it up for about 10, 12 years. I just didn't care anymore. I cared. I shouldn't say that. But I didn't want to focus on trying to be married and raise him at the same time. And I had not met any men that I wanted to introduce to my son. So rather than continue that, I just stopped. That delay is not a denial. I really believe that God is going to bring the husband to me that I'm supposed to have, but I had a job to do first. I'm happy that I had that job, and now it's time to move forward.
That's awesome. We have a couple of minutes left, and I'd really like, you've shared so much that I think hopefully will really nurture the hearts of our single parents out here. But can you tell us a little bit about, as the body of Christ, what would help? What can we do when we know a single parent? What can we do to be God's hands and feet in that person's life, or God's mouth in that case?
Specifically God's mouth. I would say first and foremost, I would err on the side of love always. Yeah. You cannot love someone too much. You can't spoil a child by holding it. People used to tell me that for years. Oh, you're going to spoil them. You know what happens when you hold a child? You know what happens when you love on a child unconditionally? When they walk away from you, they have confidence because they know when they turn around, you'll be right there.
Yes.
Err on the side of love. If you see a single parent struggling, help them. Male or female, black or white, doesn't matter. If you see a parent struggling, help. If you don't know how to help, ask them. They may tell you nothing. I would tell people that all the time. No, I'm good. I'm fine. You may have to watch that person to see where they need help because they may not be comfortable asking.
Yeah.
You may have to watch and offer help because they don't know that they need help. But the most important thing is to err on the side of love. Curtail the judgment. We don't need it.
Mm-hmm.
We walk this every single day. Nobody has to tell me that being a single parent is hard. I know. I'm living it.
Yeah.
Got that down pretty well. But, love that person. If you see the struggle, do something to help the struggle. I would encourage everyone to be involved in whatever women's support center exists in your city. Mm-hmm. For those women who have chosen to not abort and have chosen to bring those children into the world, do what you can to support the women and those children.
Yeah. And you mentioned that Avery was surrounded by people who love and spoke life into him. Mm-hmm. So that is something, there should be no excuse for not doing that.
None. And even when you see things that are wrong, mm-hmm. and I promise you, I love my son so much, I can't think of anything. Oh, the homework deal. He hated to do homework. But if you do see things that are not necessarily positive in a child, speak life anyway. Yeah. Treat that child like you would treat your own child. Treat that child. I think I saw this somewhere. Be the adult that you wish you knew when you were a child.
Yes. And you actually, you as the parent had to do something to make this possible. You chose not to turn away from the church because some people had been stupid, right? You chose to show up at church, to take him and get him involved in, the childcare and the youth group and the things like that, so that he would have community, because our children need community. If our children, especially right now, are so isolated and fed negativity and pressure by everything they listen to and watch. There's snark going on, people mocking, there's fear. They need that place where they can go, where people are speaking love and they are speaking health and they are speaking worship and gratitude and caring for one another. So I'm really grateful that you did that. We are.
But I would say quickly, I know we're almost done. But I would say quickly, find the ministry that supports you as a parent.
Yeah.
But also won't leave you behind, right? We don't want someone who says, "Oh, it's okay that you have kids out of wedlock. Go have more kids out of wedlock. Go ahead and check up with this dude." No, the truth is still the truth. Go to a place that supports you where you are. And I went to several ministries over my son's life, probably 3 different churches. And they all supported me as a single parent. They supported him as a young man and didn't put labels on him, didn't put labels on me, didn't limit us. And if you're not in a ministry that doesn't do that, if you're not in a ministry that supports you in that way, find one.
Yeah.
Just do whatever. And if you need to reach out to me after this for a further conversation, I'm more than happy to have that conversation. But you be in a place where there are people that support you. You go where you are celebrated, not where you're just tolerated. Okay, I'm done.
Ooh, go where you are celebrated, not just tolerated. Oh, that was a good one to end with. Thank you so much, Stacy. Stacy, I love talking to you. I could talk to you for like 10 hours straight.
Yeah, this is so hard. I'm sorry.
It's wonderful. I hope you'll come back and talk to us again.
Absolutely.
And for those of you who are listening, share this and use this to better our world. God bless you. This is Christy Bridges from One Moment Wiser with my special guest, Stacy Mitchell. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.